concealed within the jade pendant. Fan's body continued to exist, but was devoid of reason. Even at his relative's funeral, he behaved like a small, irrational child. Of the entire Great Ye family, only the grandfather and Fan survived. The young man was about to get married, but the engagement was unexpectedly broken off. Suddenly, the fiancés of the older brothers appeared and publicly announced that they would become little Fan's wives and continue the lineage of the Great Ye family. During their sexual encounter, the girls, completely by accident, helped Fan break the seal and recover the soul and personality of the young man. Yu Linglong, clinging to the guy with her ample breasts, asked what kind of daughters-in-law these were. Now, Fang should call them and Shu Yikshe his wives. The recklessness of his daughters-in-law helped young Fan start putting a plan into motion to take revenge for the death of all his relatives who were murdered by evil enemies. Now that Fan's soul has returned, he has regained his strength and is almost invincible in the Great Sha Empire, so he will be able to punish the killers. Yefan's body was once again filled with strength and his eyes sparkled. Thanks to his daughters-in-law, he was no longer insane, but furious and ready for a terrible revenge. Yu Linlong was the fiancé of Ye Fan's eldest brother, who was killed along with other family members, and the young woman was eager to take revenge on the villains. Zhu Yikshui was engaged to the 7th young master of the Great Ye family, and their wedding was already scheduled when her fiancé was murdered. The astonished Fan saw right in front of him the lush breasts of one of his sisters-in-law. The man was horrified by what his older brother's wives were doing. The young man stammered and mumbled, asking his sisters-in-law not to come any closer, but the girls, dressed in seductive lingerie, kept crawling persistently toward Fan. He lowered his gaze and stared at the firm breasts of the beautiful Yikshe. The boy's head was spinning with excitement. Were they serious? Yu Linlong whispered to the fool that he should call them wives. The young man broke out in a sweat from excitement. The girls' bodies were so tempting. Shu Yikshui kindly told her husband to behave himself. If Fang didn't understand something, they would teach him everything and explain everything to him. Ye Fan's face turned red. He really wanted to tell his older sisters-in-law that he wasn't a fool anymore, that there was no need to treat him that way. Meanwhile, the Yi family kept burying their children, who died under very mysterious circumstances, and for some reason, their remains always disappeared. Yi Zhenguo was killed in the northern region of Xia on July 28th at the age of 48, and his remains were never found. On the same day, July 28th, Ye Zhenhua, 43 years old, was killed in the eastern district of Xia. Their remains were never found. Ye Xingbang and Ye Xingcheng were killed in the Xuanwu district on the same day, July 28th, and their remains were never found. That same day, Ye Lentian from the southern district and Ye Zhenguo from the southeastern district of Xia were killed, and their remains were not found either. The venerable general of the Dan Kingdom, Niu, told Elder Yi with regret that the enemy's plan was too insidious, that they never saw it coming. The head of the Ye family, Cheng Feng, replied that the members of the Ye family never expected to enjoy a peaceful old age once they set foot on the battlefield, but he never thought that betrayal by their own people would be even more dangerous than the battlefield itself. They attacked on the same day and at the same time. Someone had their sights set on the Yi family. Yi Changfeng accidentally kicked his youngest grandson's favorite toy, and Feng yelled at his grandpa not to touch his Peppa Pig. The young boy tripped and fell loudly to the floor while chasing his toy, and the slippers flew off the feet of Ye's youngest son, who had lost his mind. The jade pendant on the man's chest began to glow, and Fan's soul, along with his ancient and immense powers sealed inside, tried to break free. Hugging Peppa, Fan said with a smile that his grandpa helped him stop the pig, and now she's with him. He really loves Peppa. The Ye family patriarch bent down and gently told his grandson to get up quickly, reaching out his hand to him. Mia looked at the boy with compassion. Chang Feng said that only he, the patriarch, and little Feng were left of the Ye family, and that to continue the bloodline, Ye Feng would marry a girl from the Xuan family. The old general Ye Chengfeng declared sternly that the great Ye family would never fall. No matter what happened, they would maintain their position. Everyone whispered, could this really be the youngest son of the Ye family? He was completely crazy, and yet he was the family's genius, a true Qilin. Ye Fan was only 15 years old when he reached the level of Grandmaster, thus joining the ranks of the greatest masters in human history. If it hadn't been for the car accident he suffered 5 years ago, which left him a fool, he would now be the head of the Yi family. He was incredibly strong. The eldest daughter of the Xuan family was still willing to marry him, despite him having lost his mind, and they had been very close since childhood. But then Xuan Zhenguo exclaimed, Ye Fan has lost his mind. The Xuan family can't allow Xuan Yufei to ruin her life. Therefore, today, the Xuan family officially breaks off the engagement between their eldest daughter, Yufei, and the youngest member of the family, Ye Fan. The head of the Ye family was so upset that blood spurted from his mouth. His old battle wounds flared up, and he never expected this from the Xuan family. Cheng Feng staggered, but Fan caught his grandfather. A stream of blood gushed from the old man's mouth, but he soon regained his senses and stood up again. The young man reproachfully asked Xuan Yufei why she had upset his grandfather so much, and if she really didn't want to be his wife, Fan's anymore. Cheng Feng reminded Yufei that even after what happened in Fanum, she hadn't abandoned him. He believed she wasn't like that. So, what had happened? The girl almost cried. Her uncle answered for her, explaining that now there was only an old man and a fool left in the Yi family, not like it was 5 years ago. At that time, the Xuan family was willing to go through with this marriage because the Ye family was powerful. But now, this marriage doesn't really make any sense. The head of the Yi clan growled, It's all clear now. The Xuan only respect the strong and oppress the weak, ignoring the rules. Now we see what they're really like. Yufei told Fan sadly that she was very sorry she couldn't marry him. The young man was surprised, but they still had a good time playing together. And then everyone heard Zhuxei's words. The girl said that if this girl, Xuan Yufei, doesn't want to marry Fan, then they will get married. 2 beautiful women stepped forward, and those present recognized them as the brides of the eldest and 7 sons of Ye family. Ye Fan's eldest daughters-in-law. One is the 3-star Valkyrie Anne, and the other is the director of a pharmaceutical company, the eldest daughter of the Su family. The women of the Ye family are truly exceptional. Yulin Long told Yufei's surprised father that she was the eldest daughter-in-law of the Ye family, and that she had come to the groom's funeral, but she would stay with the Ye family. Zhu Shui announced that she was the 7th daughter-in-law of the Ye family, that her fiancé had died, and that she had no intention of leaving the family that had welcomed her so warmly. The girls approached Fan and told him that they represented the 7 brides of the Yi family, and that they were all willing to marry Yi Fan to continue the family line. Xuan Zhenguo was left speechless with surprise. It couldn't be that the 7 best girls in the country were willing to marry a fool. This news hit like a bolt of lightning. Real goddesses were going to become the wives of a madman. What courage. They support the Yi family. The confused Fan tried to get away from the persistent daughters-in-law. He was unbelievably attractive. Those girls were pure passion. And suddenly, the young man felt an intense heat in his chest, coming from the jade talisman he wore, which suddenly began to vibrate strongly. And then the talisman opens. Fan cursed. 5 years passed. Finally, he broke the seal and reached the high level of a venerable warrior. 5 years ago, when Fan was training to prepare for a major breakthrough, he was attacked, which caused his body, soul, and 6 spirits to be separated. He barely caught a glimpse of the man who attacked him before collapsing onto the pavement and losing consciousness and his memory. On that fateful day, Yi Fan was run over by a heavy construction truck, and it seems his enemies didn't expect the young man to survive. The man was seriously injured in the accident. He lost a lot of blood, but still managed to survive. His enemies thought he had lost his strength and was no longer a threat. A strange twist of fate caused most of Fan's soul to become trapped in a jade amulet he wore on his chest. However, it turned out that this amulet contained countless scriptures that gave Fan many opportunities to train. But without outside help, the boy could only wait for the amulet's effect to wear off so he could return to his body and take revenge on all his enemies. And now Ye Fan has returned, but all his uncles and brothers have mysteriously died. And then there's that assassination attempt from 5 years ago. Who's behind all of this? But now that Fan is at the peak of his venerable warrior level, he has almost no equals, so he'll find the culprits and kill them. But the situation between the two daughters-in-law was very tense. There were a lot of people around, and everyone was watching them with curiosity. Zhenhui suddenly burst out laughing. Fan was a real fool, and even if he regained his senses, he wouldn't have been able to face those who killed his relatives. Yulin Long pushed Xuan aside, who seemed amused, saying that this was an internal matter of the Yi family and didn't concern anyone else. Fan thought that the daughters-in-law had publicly declared their desire to marry him, making it clear that they still supported the Ye family. If he were to say, now that he had regained his strength and mental clarity, it would cause their enemies to attack with full force, and many could suffer the consequences. To protect the family, he'll have to play dumb for a while. Fan hugged Lin Long and exclaimed, his little sister will play with him. Yi Chengfeng, stunned, walked over to the girls. His eyes wide with surprise. He hadn't expected so much resistance from them. Yulin Long told her grandfather that from now on, she was his daughter-in-law, and asked him to leave the rest to her. She and the girls would take care of it. The head of the Ye family reluctantly agreed to the powerful Valkyrie. He had no idea what the girls had planned, or how all of this would turn out for everyone. Turning to Xuan Yufei, Yulin Long, as Ye Fan's wife, announced that their engagement was off and that she was free to leave. Yufei took a few steps back and mumbled quietly, saying she was very sorry, but that it was her family's will. They didn't want to get involved with the Ye family. Fan thought that he wouldn't go after those who abandoned him, but they would regret their decision themselves when he restored the Ye family to power and glory. Lin Long told Yikshe that they were the first, and starting next month, there would be 5 more with Fan, and that they should give birth to as many heirs as possible. Poor Fan blushed. His daughters-in-law clung to him. He stammered to them to wait. He wanted to tell them something, but it was useless. The daughters-in-law did everything they could to give birth to heirs for the Ye family, so that their enemies would regret everything they had done. The spy reported to the elder of the Zhang family that the Ye family's funeral had been completed, that everything had gone smoothly, and that Changfeng hadn't done anything unusual. Just as the Ye family's daughters-in-law announced that they would become Ye Fan's wives, old Zhang ordered that chickens be killed to scare the monkey. The elder said that the operation 5 years ago was a success, and that the same person should handle this matter. The spy bowed. The elder was right. It just so happened that young Zhao was crazy about Xu Yikshe, the 7th daughter-in-law of the Ye family, and he would probably be thrilled to win her heart. Chapter 7. Zhang grumbled irritably. Yi Fan is lacking in both intelligence and strength, and as long as he stays that way, it doesn't matter whether he's alive or dead. However, if this guy starts acting strange, he must be killed immediately. He cannot be allowed to regain his strength or intelligence. The elder Yi Chengfeng invited all the daughters-in-law and thanked them for attending, but the funeral was now over, and everyone was free to leave. Yulin Long stepped forward and, on behalf of all the girls, told Grandpa that they wanted to marry Ye Fan and continue the Ye family line. The surprised head of the Yi family turned around. So it wasn't a joke? But why would they do that? They're all young beauties from prominent families. Wenlong hugged them and told them that their decision was final. Each of them would take turns accompanying Ye Fan for a month. All the daughters-in-law were convinced that they needed to give birth to as many heirs as possible for the Ye family and take revenge on their enemies for the murder of their loved ones. Fan was stunned. Were they serious? Would his 7 daughters-in-law really become his wives? What was he to them? A baby-making machine. How horrifying. Lin Long watched little Fan closely and noticed that she had just sensed fluctuations in her aura. Could it be that her strength had been restored? The guy came to, made a face and shouted, "Getting revenge! Pew pew! Terrible revenge!" The girl lowered her head sadly. It seemed like it was just her imagination. The eldest daughter-in-law firmly grabbed the baby's face with her strong hands and squeezed it. The child mumbled that it hurt, but she didn't let go. Linglong said that Ye Fan should remember that he himself had been the greatest genius, that he had been at the top, and that he would be able to do it again. And they, the 7 pure virgins, will marry him and take care of him for the rest of his life, because their fiancés were killed. But if Fan dared to betray any of his wives, Linlong swore he would chase him to the ends of the earth with his sword. Yi Fan thought, they marry him, risking becoming the target of condemnation from the whole world. What kind of determination and courage does it take to do that? Linlong said through tears, if you still have any sense left, protect the Ye family, protect your wives, and avenge your relatives. The man's face changed slightly. He clenched his fists and silently swore that damn debt would definitely be repaid. Xu Yixue asked her older sister if she was putting too much pressure on Ye Fan. His mind and strength still hadn't returned. He needed to wait a little longer. Lin Long reassured the 7th daughter-in-law, telling her that she had already contacted the sage doctor Li Chanke, who would take care of little Ye Fan. Old Cheng Feng agreed with his eldest daughter-in-law that if Lei Cheng-ko took over, he really could save their beloved baby. Fan thought that his grandfather had very serious internal injuries and that if nothing was done, he would die soon. The young man shouted, "Hooray, let them heal me." And he decided to teach some techniques to the sacred healer, Lei, and heal his grandfather with his own hands. Lin Long couldn't figure out what was going on with Fan's aura, but Yik Sui clung to the boy and whispered to him not to worry, that they would heal him. The young man sighed. No matter what they call it, they still want to turn him into a baby-making machine for all their murdered relatives. The beautiful Xu Yishu blessed. Wow, what a strong and powerful body little Fan has. It's strange even for a madman. The eldest daughter-in-law told Yikshe that, according to their agreement, she would accompany Ye Fan first for a month, and that she should do her best. The head of the Ye family, Ye Chengfeng, shed tears. What good girls. Grandpa's very grateful to them for not abandoning their family in these difficult times. Yo Linglong replied to the old man with a smile. How could it be any other way? They were one family and had to support each other no matter what. Grandpa walked over to his grandson and lightly tapped Fan on the chest with his strong general's fist. The young man swallowed involuntarily. Ye Cheng Feng said sternly that regardless of whether the baby returned to normal or not, he had to take care of that brave girl and not make his grandpa angry. The young man replied to the old man that they were his wives now and that he would love all of them, so Grandpa didn't have to worry about that. But for now, I'll have to keep everyone in the dark a little longer. Yikshe said it was already getting dark and that she would take Ye Fan with her. Today, Zhao Tianlong was hosting a business banquet, and Zhao Yikshe thought it was a great opportunity for little Ye Fan to get out for a bit. That name, Zhao Tianlong, reminded Fan of the incident that happened 5 years ago when he was hit by a huge truck while training. Before losing consciousness, Fan saw that the truck driver was a man with a scar. The young man didn't know his name. However, the boy had the man's face clearly etched in his memory. Now he could recognize him among hundreds of millions of different faces. And today, at the funeral, Yi Fan saw this man. He was standing behind Zhao Tianlong, watching everything closely. Most likely, the attack from 5 years ago was orchestrated by the Zhao family. And if that's the case, Fan will begin his revenge against them. Fan's ex-fiancé and her uncle returned to their residence after the funeral for the men of the Ye family. Yufei was feeling time. Her uncle looked into her room and indignantly asked the girl if he hadn't told her to get ready for young Master Zhao's banquet. The girl, with tears in her eyes, replied to her uncle that she didn't feel like it. That's why she hadn't gotten dressed and that she didn't want to go to the banquet. Her uncle asked if Yufei was still thinking about that idiot Ye Fan. He had already told her that the Ye family was finished and that the daughters-in-law's words were nothing but empty talk. The girl became furious. "Oh, you're going to that banquet?" her uncle reminded her. You need to put on something elegant. There will be important people there. The man let out a deep sigh. Yufei was still just a girl, but for the sake of the Schwan family, this had to be done. It was dangerous to get involved with the Ye family. When the door closed behind her uncle, Fan's ex-fiancée collapsed to her knees, helpless. Now she would be put on display like a beautiful doll. She let out a deep sigh and softly whispered the name of her beloved boyfriend, the one she had been with since early childhood. When Ye Fan and Chu Yikshay got home, the girl unbuttoned the boy's pajamas, and he asked his daughter-in-law in surprise why she was taking them off. Yikshui was surprised. Fang hadn't trained for such a long time, but then why was his body still in such good shape? It was simply amazing. The young man smiled and asked the beautiful girl if Yikshay really wanted to touch him. The girl snorted, "Oh no, she'll touch it later." The seventh daughter-in-law tossed an outfit to Fan, telling him it was for today's banquet, that he could wear it, and that they would be going. Yikshui asked Fan not to call her daughter-in-law anymore, but wife. The man smiled and said, "All right, he has another wife." The girl thought bitterly, Fan was a genius, but his fiancée abandoned him at his lowest point. What a shame for Yufei. Yikshay was sure that Fang had been through a lot, so she needed to pay more attention to him and not let him get hurt again. She hugged the boy and quietly told him that Ye Fan was a good guy, that he had promised his grandfather to love all his beautiful new wives. The seventh daughter-in-law promised that from now on, Yikshay would always be his wife, that she would love him tenderly and take care of her baby fawn. The man hugged the delicate beauty tightly and replied that Yikshay's wife was the best, and that he felt really good and at peace with her. Yikshay was puzzled. After being intimate with Fan, she felt a very strange sensation. Her body became extremely warm. This had never happened to her before. Ye Fan's strong body was filled with a burning energy thanks to his daughter-in-law, as if a powerful source of power was blazing inside him. The man smiled, thinking that this ability still remained with him, despite the 5-year break caused by the assassination attempt. This mysterious fire is the reason why Ye Fan became a Grand Master at just 15 years old. When he comes into contact with a girl and she feels emotions, Fang transforms that spiritual warmth into chi and becomes stronger. And even without contact with the girl, the fire itself generates heat, which helps with training and significantly speeds up the development of strength. Now, Fan had 7 wives, so he didn't have to worry about making progress, and then there was a knock at the door. The head of the Zhu family was calling for Yikshu to come see him. The messenger informed Xu Yikshay that the family patriarch and the second mayor were there, and asked her to come to them as soon as possible. The girl wondered if her relatives, apparently, wanted to condemn her for her decision to marry Fan. The messenger was left speechless, not knowing how to respond. Yikshay shook her head firmly and said she was ready to leave, even now. Her relatives' opinions couldn't stop her. Fan wondered if it was because the Zhu family didn't agree with her wish to marry him. He had to find out for himself. Second uncle Xu Minghao shouted at Yikshui, asking her what she was doing, if she was crazy, and why she had announced she would become the wife of that fool Ye Fan. The girl listened to her uncle rage, and he asked her if she really wanted their family to be buried along with the Ye family. One of the brothers backed Minghao up. The Ye family is finished. There's no point getting involved with them. She'll drag everyone down with her. But Xu Yikshay calmly replied that she had her own plans and had no intention of changing them, even if the whole world was against her and against the Yi family. Fan secretly watched this family meeting, thinking that the Zhu family was condemning the 7th daughter-in-law for agreeing to marry him. The relatives gathered there began to protest angrily, suggesting that this stubborn woman should be expelled from the Zhu clan for her irrational behavior. Terrified by the terrible deaths of the strongest members of the Ye family, Yixui's relatives shouted that she should be expelled from the clan. Xu Minghao turned to his older brother, the head of the family, and told him he should take better care of his eldest daughter. The head of the Zhu family raised his hand authoritatively, demanding that the clan elders stop their commotion and allow him to speak at the meeting. Shu Honghai, the head of the Shu clan, stood up and suddenly announced that he supported his daughter Yixui's decision to get married. The girl couldn't believe it. Her father, going against the opinion of most of the elders, supported her. Dear Dad, that's brave. Hung Hai asked who was the first to support the Zhu family 30 years ago when they were on the verge of collapse, and it was the Ye family. If it weren't for the Ye family, all the Zucks would be beggars or dead by now. So Yixue is right, and anyone who disagrees can go to hell. Suddenly, almost all the elders' phones in the Xu clan rang at the same time. They all received unpleasant messages. They informed the chief that the suppliers had suddenly announced they refused to work with Shu, and that people wanted to cut ties with them. Hong Hai frowned. It seems that those who attacked the Ye family have now turned their attention to them, and they're saying that someone powerful is wiping out the Ye family. The younger brothers convinced their eldest brother that now was not the time for nobility. They, the Shu family, couldn't afford to provoke the Ye family's enemies. The head of the Shu clan lowered his head. He didn't want to be ungrateful, but he also didn't want to drag his family into ruin. What should he do in this situation? Meng Hao yelled at Yixei's niece, blaming her for everything, saying that because of her, the Shu family might disappear and that they would never be able to form an alliance with the Xia family. Yixue replied that there would be someone from the Xia family at the banquet today and that she would do everything possible to maintain the relationship. The young woman stated that both her duty and the interests of the Zhu family were important to her, and that she had never refused to protect her family. If the elders don't believe in her, they can sell their properties and leave in order to survive. She won't stop, huh? Yifan admired his wife Yixei's courage and resilience. She was truly a worthy representative of the great Ye family. The man wondered which member of the Xia family would be there today. Maybe he could help Yixue with the contract. He needed to take a look. Suddenly, Zhao Tianlong's group showed up and he exclaimed, "It's the fool from the Ye family. He's probably looking for candy. Now they'll help him out." Fan thought that Zhao Tianlong was just looking for trouble. He put on a foolish face and asked where the candy was. The young master of the Zhao family spat loudly into the remaining whiskey, intending to make the hated former genius of the Ye family drink it all. Tianlong tossed his cigarette butt into the same glass. His companions laughed gleefully. They enjoyed their boss and ringleader's nasty prank. They joined in the fun, also tossing cigarette butts into the glass and starting to pick their noses and ears, adding everything to the glass. They handed me a glass. Tianlong said he had prepared a sweet drink. Zhao envied Fan because 7 beauties wanted to marry him at the same time. Lun was eager to prove to everyone that Fan was useless. The guys shouted at Fan to drink. It was delicious, and he didn't forget to thank Brother Lun. Fan pretended to be delighted. "So that's what the guys are drinking. Must be a really expensive line. That's really awesome." Zhao Tianlong and his friends were cracking up with laughter. Yifan really was a complete idiot, and the young man said something was still missing. Yifan called the cleaning lady over and politely asked her to wait a moment since he had a small matter to take care of. He needed to add more ingredients to improve the flavor. The cleaning lady was shocked. The young man added dirty cleaning water to the glass. Tianlong, still laughing, told his friends to record everything so everyone could see how the former great genius drank dirty water and spat it out. Suddenly, Tianlong's laughter stopped, and he felt a strong hand grab him by the throat. He stammered as he asked Fan what he was doing. A Fan exclaimed that treats should be shared, so Brother Zhao had to drink first, and poured the contents of the glass into Luna's mouth. Tianlong's companions watched in horror as their boss literally vomited after drinking a glass of slop. Zhao growled in anger, thinking about how that monster Ye Fan had forced him, Tianlong, to drink that filth, and that simply telling the idiot wasn't enough. Fan put on a surprised face and asked Brother Zhao, "What's wrong? Isn't it delicious?" He himself said it was a sweet drink. Fan's beautiful wives forbade him from drinking, saying it was harmful. So he shared his wine with Tianlong as a token of gratitude for his care. During those 5 years, Fan not only learned martial arts, but also worldly experiences sealed in the amulet by 13 masters. Zhao Tianlong shouted at his men to beat Ye Fan to death in revenge for daring to humiliate him so much. The men rushed at Ye Fan. He was confused. Were they really going to go through with it? He clenched his fists. He would have to defend himself against them. Suddenly, a booming order to stop echoed through the air, and a very strong man with a thunderous voice asked who dared to lay a hand on his brother, Little Fan. Strong hands grabbed the heads of Zhao's frightened henchmen who had rushed at Ye Fan, while he calmly stood to the side. Wang Fugui forcefully shoved the thugs who were attacking his childhood friend, making them crash into each other and hit their heads. The stunned Zhao Tianlong asked Fugui why he was there. Hadn't he left the city? Everyone thought he would never come out. Wang Fugui, Ye Fan's childhood friend, asked who would protect his brother from scum like young Zhao if he wasn't there. Fugui grew up with Fan, and for all these 5 years, he protected his friend. The young man thought that he would definitely find a way to repay him. One of Zhao's friends told him that Wang Fugui was one of the strongest in the city, that he shouldn't mess with him, and that it was better to leave now. Furious, Tianlong said they were leaving their 2 companions lying on the ground at the feet of the powerful Fugui. Zhao clenched his teeth mamer. He was sure that Wang Fugui wouldn't be able to protect Ye Fan forever, and that sooner or later Long would get Su Yikshe. Fugui exclaimed that Fan was someone special. 7 charming beauties wanted to marry him at the same time. Who would have imagined that? He hugged his old friend and said that if Fan were in his right mind, he would literally pee himself from such unprecedented happiness. The guy almost suffocated in his friend's strong embrace. He indignantly wondered who Fugui thought he was. Wang watched Fan closely, mentally wondering what kind of expression he had on his face. This guy was starting to remind him of his old friend, and then it occurred to Fugui that his childhood friend had started to recover, and maybe his mind was coming back, at least partially. Van leaned in and tried to sense Fan's aura, picking up barely noticeable vibrations. He definitely hadn't experienced anything like this in the past 5 years. He said there was something wrong with Fan's aura. Had his friend really recovered? The young man sighed. Wang Fugui was just too clever. And then the childhood friends heard Su Yikshui's melodious voice, and she asked Little Fan what he was doing there, since she had completely lost sight of him. He had left and disappeared while she was putting on her makeup. She had asked him to wait for her. The beautiful woman asked with concern if Fan was all right. Wang Fugui bowed to his 7th sister-in-law and told her not to worry, that he would protect Brother Feng, even at the cost of his own life. Su Yikshe smiled at Fugui, and he returned to the city. What a relief. Now she could be at ease about her little Fan. The host announced that today they had an honored guest, Xia Hao, who, they said, had come to close a deal with one of the families in the city. The young woman invited everyone present to welcome the esteemed guest, the president of a major pharmaceutical company, Miss Jia. Yikshe asked Fugui to look after Fan, as she needed to speak with Hao. Wang warns that the Zhao family was targeting the alliance. The president of the company, Jia Hao, took the stage and welcomed everyone to this luxurious business banquet. Zhao Tianlong was confident that once he closed that deal with the Xia family, Su Yishui would come crawling to him on her knees, begging for a favor. The host asked Xia, who had attended the banquet hosted by the Xia family, if that meant he intended to form a partnership with them. Xihao smiled. The Zhao family was certainly a good choice, but the market in this city is very large, and his company is open to suggestions. Young Master Zhao's face twisted with anger, wondering what that old grouch meant by saying they were still open to other proposals. Yikshe exclaimed cheerfully that they had a chance. Ye Fan thought about it and recognized that person. Xia Hao, they had met before. Xia Hao's gaze suddenly stopped on Ye Fan. He recognized him too and was frozen in surprise. Of course it was the same guy. The president of a major pharmaceutical company exclaimed in surprise, "Yes, this is the divine doctor. He's finally found us. Everyone present stepped aside in surprise, forming a corridor between the guest of honor and Yifan. No one understood anything. Jia Hao approached Fan, exclaiming that he had finally found the divine doctor and that he could finally repay him for saving his life. Everyone whispered in surprise, "This fool knows Xia Hao? The Xu family hit the jackpot. Xia will definitely go into business with them." Young Zhao couldn't understand why President Xia was talking to that idiot. Was the lucrative contract about to slip through his family's fingers? Tianlong told President Xia that he must be mistaken, that he was just the village idiot. How could he possibly know anything about medicine? He didn't know a thing. Besides, Xia Hao probably already knows about the Ye family situation. It's better not to get involved with them to avoid bringing misfortune upon yourself. The president of a major pharmaceutical company abruptly interrupted Zhao Tianlong, telling him he wasn't mistaken, that this man had saved him. 5 years ago, when Hao was on the brink of death, Ye Fan saved him. But what happened to this doctor? Why did he lose his mind? Shi Ixshe explained that her fiancé was hit by a car 5 years ago and still hasn't recovered. Hao sighed and said, "That explains everything." Young Master Ye was very strong, gifted in both martial arts and medicine, and apparently suffered some injuries after his encounter. Hao asked Mrs. Xu, since her family was in the pharmaceutical business, if they would be interested in partnering with the Xia family. Tianlong didn't give up. The Xu family had already been blacklisted by all their partners because of their connections with Ye Fan. Wasn't Hao afraid of the consequences? Hao said he didn't care about the consequences. If Fan hadn't saved him, the Xia family wouldn't even exist, and Yi Shui wouldn't have left Ye either. Jia Hao declared that the Xu family would be his family's partner in this city, and that anyone who opposed the Xu family here would also become an enemy of the Xia family. Tears streamed down Xu Yixie's face as she grasped the hand President Xia offered her. From